Hey, it's Corey from the Essex County Field Naturalist Club, here to talk about eBird and how you can submit your bird sightings. Let's get started. All right, so welcome to tonight's presentation, sharing your bird sightings and introduction to eBird. Be going through a few different things tonight, talking about what is eBird, why it's important, how you can use it, and showing an example of submitting some checklists. So first off, what is eBird? So eBird is a database developed by Cornell University, started in 2002, the Lab of Ornithology. It is the world's largest biodiversity-related citizen science project. There are over 100 million bird sightings contributed each year around the world. What it is citizen science. So anyone can submit, anyone can view the data, and you can be a part of it as well. The point of it is to gather data. So it's an internet-based checklist program, if you're not familiar with it. So it's a tool for gathering observational data on birds and some tools for maintaining personal records as well. So all of the data you submit is actually stored in a database ready for you to access, as well as for scientific purposes as well. So it's a full archive of all submissions from around the world of any bird sighting. So for sharing, what it is a tool for visualization of bird species across the world. The data is used by educators, scientists, and even us birders. So eBird, what's in it for me? So eBird maintains a record of all of your sightings. So anything you submit is stored in the database and you can access it. And it also is a contribution to citizen science, like I'd mentioned. So it actually keeps track of all the birds you've seen and all the locations you've seen those birds in, and allows you to share even a list with other members of your party. So if you're out with birding with other people, you can share that list with them and you all get to share the same lists and you can keep track of everything that way. So you can set up alerts for rare birds, needs in a specific area. So if you're interested in keeping an eye out for something rare that might show up in the area, you can get alerted whenever somebody submits a report with that data. Or if you have specific needs in an area, so say somebody sees something that you're interested in seeing, you can get alerted if you hadn't seen that bird yet. You can use the data to actually review expected arrival and departure times for the different bird species that you're interested in. It's great for trip planning. So if you're going to a different area, you can check out the hotspots that are available. So hotspots are locations that receive a lot of traffic for birding. So an example would be Point Pelee, where it's a common place to go birding. So there's a bunch of specific areas that are set up to be able to choose a location as the hotspot, submit data from there, and then everybody gets to see the same data from the same location. You can see expected species, any rare birds, things like that in an area that you're planning on visiting. And that's around the world as well. While doing this, you're actually contributing to science. It's a citizen science project. So you're actually helping with conservation efforts and migration and population monitoring. All of that data is used by scientists for those types of research projects. And if you're into the competition side of things, you can actually see where you rank against other birders around the world. This is completely optional. It's not for everyone, but the option is there if you're interested. What happens when I submit data? Well, every record submitted actually goes through some level of verification, whether it's automatic or some of it is actually reviewed by a local reviewer. So on the automatic side, there are certain filters set up. So if you accidentally put in, say, 2,000 wood ducks from your backyard, there's certain levels of verification that are built into the system that can kind of trip and see that, that's probably a faulty submission. And it'll prompt you saying, is this number correct? And you're just able to update it on the fly. The more detailed review by local reviewers are typically more for rare birds or a specific sighting that might be unique to an area. They may reach out to you to get a little more information on the bird. So all of this data is actually available to you as well, scientists, completely free. So signing up for eBird is free, accessing all the tools and the data is all free as well. What do we need to do in order to be able to submit sightings to eBird? There's only a few things. It's really a three-step process. One, grab your binoculars, A camera, if you have it, it's optional. It's not necessary. A notebook to make some notes so you can keep track of how many birds you're seeing and the species you're seeing. Or if you have a smartphone, there is an eBird app that you can actually use. We're going to be going just through the website version today, but in the future we'll look at the app in more detail. Step 2, you actually have to get out there and go birding. Now, you don't have to go far. You can submit data from your own yard, right from the comfort of your living room if you want, and looking out the window with your binoculars. All of that data is very valuable, so you don't have to go far. Step 3, sign in or sign up for eBird, submit your sightings, and you're on your way. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go birding. I'm going to take you along as I head out for a little excursion here and see if we can see some birds, record those species, come back, and we'll actually enter them into eBird and see how that goes. So here we are in a little natural area, and we're actually going to take a look around, see what we can see as far as bird species go, and keep track as we're walking. So we've got up here, we got a common grackle flying in, so we're just gonna kind of count them as we go. So we got a couple grackles there flying over, and you're also going to be listening for birds too. So I can hear a Baltimore Oriole off in the background. There's a orchard oriole singing. May not be picked up on the microphone here, but it's things that I'm just going to keep track as I walk along here and see what we can see. Oh, we've got a great blue heron that's just flying out of the marshy area here. Not sure if it picks up on the camera here. So what you're doing is you just keep track of everything you're seeing and keep track of the numbers. We've got a red-winged blackbird flying overhead. We've got some barn swallows flying over. We've got some more red-winged blackbirds and grackles flying overhead, a few starlings. So I'm just gonna keep making some notes here as I go along. If you do have the app, you can also enter these sightings on the fly. But if not, just make some notes as you go along in a small little notepad and enter the data when you get home. Again, keep track of the distance walked, how long you've been out, what time you started, how many people are with you, that sort of thing. And basically, as you're entering the data, it's just gonna ask you those questions and you'll be all set and ready to enter it. There's a yellow warbler down here. It's going into a nest. I just saw it carrying some food. So I know that they're nesting in this area. So that's one note I'm gonna actually mark down, and I can actually enter that data into eBird as well. Got a Baltimore checker spot right here. It's pretty neat to see. Get you in a little closer. A spot here where I've always noticed we've had some goldfinches around in this area. They typically nest a little later, and we always find in this little area of the park year after year. It's kind of neat the things you see over time. If you keep track of all this data, it all helps. Some ducks flying overhead. 3 mallards total here. Make some notes about that. Warbling vireo singing off to the side here. We've got a couple tree swallows flying overhead. Another barn swallow. They like to feed in the lagoons right behind us here. So often see them throughout the day. The numbers climb in the evening. Things I've noticed as I've entered more data over time. It's a bit of a windy day, but it's really gorgeous. Oh, actually just had some cedar waxwings flying overhead. I had a couple gulls just fly over here, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to identify them before they vanished behind the trees. But there is a way to record that. It's still relevant data, and we'll be able to record that in eBird, and I'll show you how we do that. There might be a robin's nest in this tree here somewhere, but I'm not going to disturb it. I'm just going to keep moving, give it some space here. Again, just keep my eyes and ears open. Counting the birds as I go along here. Maybe just pause, listen for a few minutes. Got an oriole singing behind us. There's a willow flycatcher that's been calling in the background here. Just hoping he would might start calling again. Hopefully that picked up that time. But we've been on the trail for about 15 minutes now, and we're gonna head back and get ready to enter this data into eBird. We'll show you how everything is done. In order to submit a checklist, you actually have to visit the website, and I'm going to take you through that in a second here. If you don't have an account, create one. It's very simple, and sign in. And as I'd mentioned, there is an app available as well. If you're interested in that, you can just search for it on your app store for eBird, and it'll come up. It will kind of walk you through in a similar fashion that we're going to go through on the website, but a little bit easier, I find, at times. But we'll talk about that another time. To get started, really, it's just another 3-step process. You're going to enter some location data, your times, how long you're out for, how long you walked, what sort of activities you were doing. Add the birds that you saw, any details about them. If you took photos or recorded sounds, you can actually add that as well to your checklist, and really just hit the review and submit button and you're all done. It's really that simple. So I'm going to walk you through the website now on how to submit the data. Okay, to get started, just visit ebird.ca and it'll bring you to this page here. And you'll see right away that there's an easy button on the right, top right, create an account if you don't have one, or the sign in button. Just before we get to that, I'm just going to kind of take you through the site really quickly here to give you just a quick overview. I highly recommend going through this site on your own. There's a lot of information here and hard to cover very well in a short video like this. There's just a few buttons, like I mentioned here across the top. The submit button, that's where you're actually going to go to actually submit your checklist. Explore, we're going to come back to that one in a second here. My eBird is where, when you sign into your account, all of your data is going to be stored, so you can access anything that you've submitted, all of your checklists, all of your life lists, all of your region lists, everything like that is going to be under the My eBird section. So we're on the Science tab now. This is a fascinating section of the site. Here you can see all of the trend data based on submissions that people have made across the world. So you can actually view basically animations of migration, different trends over time of populations. Everything is housed in here as far as that section goes. It's a lot of data to go through here, and you can actually just search your way through and spend hours on this section of the site. The About, just a little more information about actually the eBird project. You can research that through there. The news is, there's often latest updates, different projects that are happening that you can participate in. An example of Global Big Day, that just happened on May 9th, 2020. There's all kinds of different news topics that come in here, so check that out every once in a while. The one that's really going to help you out is actually the help section here. If you ever run into trouble, check out the help section. Enter your search term and you'll probably come across an answer or somebody else has had this similar problem in the past. There's a lot of great data and information in here to help you sort out any issues you might have with eBird. But really, eBird is very simple to use, so don't be intimidated. Just dive in, see what you could do. So we're on the Explore section now. In here, there is a lot of information that you can browse your way through and spend hours on this section. It's fascinating. You can explore hotspots if you're traveling to an area, or even just to see what hotspots, what are popular birding areas around you. Bar charts show you expected species throughout the year for regions. You pick the region and it'll show you when those birds are expected to be there. You can check out target species, so that's listing in on birds that you still need to see in a certain area. You can sign up for alerts. If you're into the competition side, there's the top 100. There's so much information on this page. It's a great spot to spend some time and reviewing. It'll help you learn even more about birding and some of the usefulness of eBird. And you're actually being a part of all of this section of the website, essentially, when you're submitting your checklists. So let's get on to creating an account if you don't have one. It's a very simple process to get started with eBird and creating an account. Just enter a few details here, click on the create account, and you're on your way. I already have an account, so I'm just going to sign in. So now that I've signed in, we can look at my eBird section. What this does is breaks down all of your sightings, basing it on different regions that you can select here, major regions, country, state, province, county, and you can see all the species broken down that you've reported over your lifetime of birding and entering your data into eBird. There's a lot of information you can pull out of this, and again, it keeps track of everything for you. If you want to, you can download this data and keep it, but everything is kept and secure and backed up multiple times. So let's actually get into the submission part. We're going to enter the bird sightings that we had on our walk just a few minutes ago. So just click on the submit button. If you hadn't entered a checklist here, there won't be anything in this section yet on choosing your locations, but these are all the locations that I have submitted from over my few years of birding. So these are all the locations. So you can quickly go back in and check one off. If you're going to be birding in the same location and you want to submit a checklist from that location, just pick it from that list if it's, but again, it could be pretty long. So I recommend starting on the find it on the map. So I'm just going to start with Essex, Ontario, Canada. So that gets me down to the county level. And now I'm going to be able to zoom in. So the red markers are hotspots. So the closer you zoom in, you're going to see them turn into a little fire icon here. So those are birding hotspots that when you're submitting, these are common areas that people submit checklists from. Any of these blue dots are more of my personal location. So if I wasn't exactly in a hotspot area, but I was outside and just happened to be on a road or in another small park that doesn't have a hotspot set up, you can choose that location as well. But if you're submitting from a hotspot, you always want to choose that hotspot location if it's available. So this is the hotspot we're going to use from our walk, and I choose it. And then it's just going to take me through. I'm already on step 2 of 3, so we're already moving along here pretty quickly. So the observation date, we're going to pick June 7th. And you just have to pick your observation type. So traveling, meaning you're walking, you were moving a certain distance. If you were standing still in a fixed position, so if you're doing a hawk watch or watching from a window, something like that, you pick stationary. Historical, if you're entering some historical sightings, you can't remember all of the details, you can choose that one. Incidental is if you want to submit a checklist for something that, but birding wasn't really your primary focus at that time. So maybe you're doing some gardening in your yard and you happen to notice a bird flying that you want to report. And you can actually choose the incidental checklist. So the top 3, I would say, are traveling, stationary, and incidental. There are some other choices in here as well. Those are for different protocols. But again, the typical ones you're going to use are traveling, stationary, or incidental. So I was moving. I recorded my start and stop times and the distance traveled. So I'm going to choose travel. So my start time was 12 noon. So I'm just going to enter all those points as I go along. I was out for 20 minutes. And the distance traveled was 1.25 kilometers based on my tracker on my watch. Party size, I was by myself, so just 1. Checklist comments is an optional field if you want to enter in specific information about a checklist. If you want to review it later, anything like that, you can add any notes in here in this section. But I'm just going to leave it blank for now. Click the continue button, and you're already into the section where you're actually going to enter the number of birds that you saw of each species. There are a few ways of doing it here. This is going to come down to personal preference. You can search for a bird in the search field, say mallard. And if you search for it, it'll come up with some suggestions and it'll bring you down in the section where the mallards are. So we know we had 3. So that's one way of doing it. The second way is typically how I find myself doing it. I actually just scroll down through the list. I look at my notes of the species I recorded and just kind of follow along section by section and looking back at my notes and referencing those. So I'm going to go do that now. I'm going to enter in just birds along the way that I had reported, I had seen. So So I had 4 mourning doves, going to enter that there. And just kind of follow down the list. There's a bunch of birds on here that I didn't see, but we're going to keep going until we find something I did. So I had reported that I had seen gulls, but I wasn't able to identify them down to a species or a specific species. So I can choose this option here called gull spa or gull species, where I couldn't identify it either as a ringbill or herring or whatever it was. So there were 2 birds that I knew were gulls, couldn't get the exact species down, so I can just choose gull spa. And there's a few different options like that you'll see along the way. And we had a great blue heron. And again, just keep following down the list. This is how I personally do it. Some people are different. They may take their notes and find the specific bird. So if they had, let's say, we had a chimney swift. So I would scroll through until I found chimney swift and enter chimney swift. There are different ways of doing it. So it's going to be personal preference here. Personally, like I'd mentioned, I just scroll through, check back, reference my notes, enter the number. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, enter all the birds I've seen from my notes, and we'll come back here in a second. Okay, so we're on to yellow warbler. So if you remember back in the video, I had noticed the yellow warbler was actually carrying food into a nesting location. So there was 1 bird, but there's actually some extra details here I can add. So if you click on the Add Details button, it pulls up this little drop-down area. So I can actually click on the age and sex area. It was, I noticed that it was a female, and it was an adult carrying some food in. So we're just going to click 1 adult female, basing it on that. And some other information is I can check in this breeding code area. And I can actually, there's some options in here. So I saw it carrying food, so I just picked that option. So now I'm adding even more details to my sighting. And you can do this throughout your checklist if you want. The more details, the better. But it's completely optional. It's up to you how you enter your checklist. Okay, so I've got everything entered into here. If you aren't able to get an exact count or at least a very close estimate of a number of birds that you'd seen of a certain species, there is an option where you can actually just put an X, and that would represent that species was present, but you weren't able to give it a full count on how many birds you saw. But the best data to enter is always if you can give a number with that. But again, X's are better than no numbers. So at least we know that the species is present when you were submitting this checklist. Okay, so we're basically done here. I'm just going to quickly review. Looks like I've got everything in, all the details I wanted. I'm going to touch on entering imagery in the next step here. So basically we're on step 3. I'm just going to come down on the bottom right section. It says, are you submitting a complete checklist of the birds you were able to identify? Yes, I was. Ideally, your checklist would include all the birds that you're able to identify. So typically you're going to click yes. You always want to try and get your data as clean as possible here. So click submit. Now, this is my submission. My checklist is now in. I have now submitted some data. This data is now part of eBird. If I want to go in and edit anything, you'll see some different things here. I can edit the species if I forgot something, or if I notice that I put something in wrong, I can always edit it. You can always go back and change anything you want. You can change the date and time, change the location. So if you made a mistake, it's no problem. Go back, edit it, and it'll update it on the fly. If you want to be able to add a picture, we can just click on the Add Media button. And I'm just going to give an example here. We'll go down to Yellow Warbler, and we're going to pick Add Media. And I'm just going to look on my computer here. I've got an example picture here just to show you of how we would enter Yellow Warbler. I'm going to delete this after, but it's just an example. So you click the Add Media button. A pop-up will come up on your computer asking you to choose the image. So wherever you store it on your computer, I've got it in this folder, so I'm going to choose it. And it's now uploading it. And you'll see a little bit of a progress bar here at the bottom. It'll complete. You can add some more details to your image here as well. If you had a really clear picture, you can rank it higher. for yourself. If there's any details you want to add about that specific picture, you can do it here as well. So it's pretty easy to upload media. There's different types of media you can upload. So clicking on Add Media gives you a little bit of a detail on the side here on what types of files you can upload. So for photos, you've got JPEGs, PNG, or GIF. There's different audio forms. So if you recorded calls or song, anything like that, if you recorded just an audio clip, you can upload that, or a video. You can upload it as well. There are some limitations on the file size, so you just have to watch for that. And it'll give you a warning if you try and upload something that's too large. And that's basically it. So we basically just click the Done button. And now if you scroll down on your checklist, you'll actually see that that image is now part of your checklist. On your checklist summary, it's actually going to show you how many species you observed, and any details of photos or anything like that. Any other media that you uploaded will give you that breakdown as well on your checklist. If you had other people that you want to share this checklist with, there is a share button. You just click on that. And you can, if you have a contact set up in eBird, you can share with them or just enter their email address. So now if you go into my eBird, so this is my section again. This is all about me, all of my submissions. I can check now and see where that checklist is. It's right here. So it'll come in at the last position here at the top, and it'll show me all the checklist I had. I can go back in, I can edit it, I can delete it, or I can share it with somebody. So if I notice that I made a mistake, again, you can go in and edit it at any time. And that's basically it on how you submit a checklist to eBird. It's very simple. It can be a little intimidating to get started, but when you start to think of it as just basically 1, 2, and 3 steps, you can get started and entering your data quickly and easily and be part of citizen science. So now I'm just going to go through a few common questions that come up as far as what happens if there's a bird species that I don't see on my list that I know that I've seen. So sometimes you might come across a rare bird that actually doesn't show up here in the standard list of expected species from the area. And the checklist here that you're going to see is birds that you would expect to see in the area based on the time of year that you're choosing for your checklist. So you could see that this could change over time, the birds that you see in a checklist area. But if you don't see it in the list, you can actually add species. So that is going to give you the option to find something specific. So let's use a pretty rare bird. If something showed up in this area, like painted bunting, for example. Bunting. So I'm going to choose painted bunting now that I've found it in the checklist. And it's automatically going to tell me that I'm going to need to enter other details with this. The bird is rare for this area, for this date and location, and it's going to ask you to add some comments. You can't submit this without adding those details. This actually helps with the verification of the data. This is going to notify the reviewer from the area. They're going to look into it. They may come back to you with some questions for you. It's not a problem. Just if you can help, any of the details that you can help provide that the reviewer asks is all helpful in the review process. So if I happen to see a painted bunting in this area, I would make sure I would enter as much detail about the sighting as possible. If I had a picture, that's even better. But any sort of other information that you can add, especially for a rare bird or a bird that doesn't show up on the checklist, on the standard checklist, is very helpful. But you will come across this at times, especially if you get out more, you're going to come across birds that don't show up on the standard checklist. Sometimes you might put it in by mistake. Not a problem. It's kind of giving you a warning just to double check your submissions. You'll see a very similar warning come up when you hit submit if you entered a really high count of a specific species of bird. It's just really a double check, because a lot of times you might add an extra 0 or something like that as you're typing in these numbers. It's a common problem. It's a common mistake. It's not an issue. The system is smart enough to give you a little bit of a warning, say, hey, did you really mean to enter 5,000 or was it 500? It just gives you the option to go back and edit it before a reviewer has to check anything. But don't be intimidated by that. It's not a problem. It's just giving you a little bit of a warning. and helping you make sure your submissions are clean. That's it. Thank you very much. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to our YouTube channel, where we'll be sharing more videos like this in the near future. If you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up. If you feel free to leave a comment below, we'll try and answer as many questions as possible. And visit us anytime at EssexCountyNature.com. Take care.